Scorpio 21. A soldier derelict in his duty. This is about conscientious objection. Now, we don't win society's approval by doing this, by going against what other people are doing. The conscientious objector doesn't want to kill, doesn't want to do what he is told to do by society. And typically the conscientious objector is someone of conscience, a woman who feels she cannot kill, a man who refuses to allow himself the animal nature to gain dominance. And society, of course, is dependent upon that very fact of our being able to control the animal nature. So when society decides that it needs to go to war, it has to actually give permission to certain people under a very, very strict discipline to kill. Whereas normally they're actually denied that right. This presents such an ambiguity that it's a distortion on some level. On the soul level, it's a distortion. The soul really doesn't want to do any harm at all. Killing is absurd to the soul. So anyone who allows themselves to get put into a situation where they are required to kill necessarily closes off to the soul. You cannot kill somebody and also tune into God. It's just silly to think that you can. Now, those of us who actually take this idea into the wider field, this isn't only about conscientious objection in the face of war. This is also about refusal to follow society's constraints when they offend your conscience. Some things society requires of us are simply not right for us on the level of soul. We won't do it if we've got that strength of spiritual connectedness. If we have that faith, that ability to tune into the highest sense of self, then we speak with a certain authority otherwise denied us, and we act with the same level of authority. And usually that's a requirement, I would say a necessary requirement, but I would also offer the possibility that it is a sufficient requirement. If we align what we're doing with our conscience, there is some greater power given to us. Either the power to break through and overcome on the one hand, or a different kind of power, a subtle power, to get a sense of what's going on, what's coming, what's going to be, and ducking the problem, not putting yourself in harm's way, just escaping an area which is just about to be overcome by troubles. If we tune into that part of us that knows how to read the symbols, the signals that are all and everywhere, all around us and everywhere, if we can actually read those signals, then we can step away in time to avoid the need to confront society for its sins and evils. Now, in this idea, we're putting forward the concept that the individual is powerful. Now, of course, society is awesomely powerful, and most people think it is overwhelmingly so. They feel overwhelmed because they must obey the boss. They must obey the policeman because that's the way things are. And typically people will accept that. They'll accept the authority that goes along with that. But a truly evolved spiritual being takes a greater responsibility. They take their own authority. We're each responsible for ourselves. No one else is. So that means we must have authority for our own behavior. Those two things must and always do go hand in hand, authority and responsibility. They're two sides of the same coin. So if we deny ourselves the authority to make a decision, especially on the level of shall we kill somebody or not, if we don't claim that authority, we're not claiming any responsibility either, and we live our lives out as children, really, having no responsibility for who we are or what we do, and that's absolutely unacceptable to any serious spiritual seeker. The beginning and the end of this quest is I. What am I? What do I decide? What do I choose? How do I respond? It's all to do with I. And society is the grit that we need to discover what contours of qualities that I has or is. Without society requiring of us something that we don't want to do, we could not assert the uniqueness of who we are, and we couldn't find out how strongly we feel that way and how powerful we get when we do feel strongly about something. It just couldn't happen. The earth plane, this earth world, this physical world that we live in, is actually meant to be hard. That's its purpose, to measure us, to see what we do when push comes to shove, to see if we can cope when life becomes intolerable. Can we tolerate it? Can we find a way to deal with what comes up? And that certainly deals with a level of conscience. If we live according to our conscience, then we must have principles. Most of what we do is a responsiveness unconsciously out of expediency. Somebody asks you to do something, yeah, why not? What's the point in resisting? And usually that might be an acceptable answer, but sometimes it is not. Even on a small level, if somebody says, well, look, could you just say you did that? You say, well, I didn't do that. Yes, but, just tell a lie. I don't tell lies. That's only a white lie. It's a lie. I'm not going to tell it. It might be to do with somebody's T-shirt. Do you like my T-shirt? No, I don't. That's the correct answer. It's not permissible to tell a lie even on the level of a white lie to save somebody's own feelings of need for validation. It's not your problem. But it is your problem if you tell them a lie about it. Whatever your opinion is, you could be elegant, courteous, but you must be truthful. And we take that right up the scale to the highest level where you say, no, I'm not going to kill. I'm just not going to do it. I will take all of the consequences of this. And certain figures in history are outstanding in this. In Sufism, a character called Al-Hallaj had a realization, a high spiritual vision of the equivalence between self and God when you reach a certain state of being. And he wanted to teach people this. And that was considered heretical. He was considered to be guilty of blasphemy and locked up for a very long time. And yet his principles were more important to him than his comforts. So he spent his life in prison rather than admit something that wasn't true. Nelson Mandela is another example of that principle. We do suffer for our principles, but that's what makes them principles. They're to be fought for, or they don't really have power. And we gain the benefit from this later, maybe not even in this lifetime, but to have that sense of strength of being, knowing that you stand by your principles, is a goal worth winning. It gives you a sense of self which is immeasurably more profound and worthwhile than any goals you might have to do with expediency and fulfillment of pleasure. So this degree is a lot to do with whether we follow our head or our hearts. The head, in other words, the mind, the intelligence, that which thinks, is clever, tricky. It's not necessarily truthful. And what ideas that you can come up with, what realizations, what intelligent inferences you can draw from what you experience. Maybe it's right, but maybe it's wrong. The mind doesn't really care about truth so much. The heart does. The heart really cares about the reality of one's own personal subjective feelings. And the conscience that we're talking about here is more heart-centered than head-centered. We can come up with some ideas about what we think is the right way to live, but actually, if you do something which you know is wrong, it troubles the heart, doesn't it? There's this heavy feeling, a clouded darkness occludes the heart. The conscience that we have on the deepest level is heart-centered. And the heart is not society's, it's mine. We're going against society in order to affirm the right of the individual to be who they are. And the individual has that power if they choose to take it. Most people don't.